Good evening and welcome to the very first program of Focus Israel. We will from now on give you weekly newscasts and other exciting documentaries and in-depth programs from, you've guessed it, with a focus on Israel. My name is Fredrik Larsson and I've been working as a journalist for a number of years in a Christian newspaper over here in Sweden. And I'll be one of the people that you will frequently meet every week from now on. But now I'd like to introduce you to our anchor in Jerusalem. Paul, over to you.
Hi, my name is Paul Whedon and I'm the Jerusalem reporter of Focus Israel here in Jerusalem. I've worked as a freelance journalist here in Israel for about 2.5 years, and during that time I've written for a number of Swedish newspapers and magazines. Many people around the world are very interested in Israel. At the same time, reports from Israel are often simplified and biased. We at Focus Israel have the ambition to give our viewers a deeper understanding of this country and of the people that live here. We will bring you news that is rarely picked up by other news sources, and we will give you the historical background to what is happening here in Israel so that you as viewers can get a better idea of the situation. In short, we hope to complicate the picture for you, dear viewers, because the picture is often very complex. But we also want to show you that Israel is a country which symbolizes hope for millions of Jews around the world, and also for millions of Christians that have rejected centuries of anti-Semitism and replacement theology, and who today see themselves as the brothers of the Jewish people. We want to show that Israel is the only true democracy in the Middle East, the only country in this region where everybody is free to express their opinion without fear of persecution. It is a country with a fascinating history, a booming economy, and a rich cultural life, or as it is described in the Bible, a land flowing with milk and honey. Tova haaretz me'od me'od. It's a very good land. Over to you, Fredrik.
Yes, and now I will start bringing you up to date with some of the news that has been in focus lately. In November, Tel Aviv in Israel will host the Watec event. It's a cleantech exhibition and conference. And prior to this event, an Israeli consultant by the name of Avraham Israeli visited Sweden not too long ago. And this is what he had to say after his meetings.
Hello, this is Fredrik from Stockholm, and I'm here today with Mr. Avraham Israeli from Israel. You've been here in Sweden today talking to audiences. What was the message you brought today?
Well, the message that I brought, that Israel is not only what you see on CNN, but Israel has a lot of innovation, especially in the cleantech area, and I wanted Swedish audience and Swedish companies to learn about it and to do something together.
That's good. How do you feel the reaction was to it?
Well, the reaction was very positive. I saw a lot of enthusiasm from the audience about cooperating with Israeli technologies and Israeli companies and doing business together and implement those technologies together.
Mm. Let me ask you this. Why would you challenge a Swedish company to come to Watec exhibition and conference in Israel?
Well, on one hand, one can say that Israel is such a small country and in the middle of nowhere, in a troubled area like the Middle East. But on the other hand, Israel has a lot to offer in cleantech technologies, and we are open. We open our arms to cooperate with Swedish companies. We would like them to come and to find the right technologies to be implemented anywhere in the world.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
And for those of you interested, we will show a 30-minute interview with Mr. Avraham Israeli on the matter of the solar, the wind, and the water, and other renewable energy technologies. Because you do know Israel is one of the leading countries in the matter. So please check your timetable for that. And what has become known as the Aftonbladet Affair, it keeps growing. You know the story and the article in which Donald Boström published in the Aftonbladet newspaper about the possible or the speculation that Israelis would steal organs from Palestinians. It keeps growing, as I said. And this week, Prime Minister Mr. Netanyahu, he actually reaffirmed his standpoint that Sweden, and including Foreign Minister Carl Bildt, should condemn the article. And speaking of the matter, he also raised the question that whether is Mr. Bildt even going to visit Israel during the EU presidency that Sweden holds this at the moment? We'll get back to that. And this week, speaking of Aftonbladet again, the General Secretary of the Swedish Israel Information, Lisa Abramovic, she visited the west coast of Sweden in Gothenburg to give a lecture on the topics of Aftonbladet, the media, and Israel. And afterwards, she actually told Focus Israel that she thinks Mr. Carl Bildt, our foreign minister, will visit Israel. She thinks he can't afford not to go. And that is all for me tonight. And now, back to you, Paul, in Israel.
The news in Israel this past week was dominated by the so-called Goldstone Report about the war in Gaza 9 months ago. The report, requested by the UN Commission for Human Rights, reached the conclusion that Israel perpetrated war crimes during the fighting in Gaza. However, this was a conclusion that the Commission reached even before Richard Goldstone traveled to Gaza to gather facts for the report. He was subsequently guided by Hamas terrorists in Gaza. On the American TV channel PBS, the American ambassador to Washington, D.C. summed up why Israel completely rejects the conclusions of the report. Israel basically was the equivalent of being summoned to a court in which its guilt was already presumed, in which one of the jurors had already declared Israel guilty, and which the witnesses for the prosecution were in fact murderers. End quote. This past weekend, terrorists in Gaza fired 2 Kazam Rockets at Israel. Since the informal ceasefire in January, over 250 rockets have been fired at Israel from Gaza. More than 1 million Israelis live within range of this rocket terror. According to the Jewish calendar, the year 5770 started this past Saturday. The month before the New Year and the following 10 days leading up to the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, are characterized by introspection in Judaism. Special penitential prayers are recited in synagogues and yeshivot every night. We end this broadcast with images from Midreshet Lindenbaum, a Bible and Talmud school for women in Jerusalem. My name is Paul Whedon. Shana Tova u'mevorechet. Have a good and blessed New Year, and see us again next week.